Hello. So excited to be here chatting about this with you. Um, so my first four babies were within the system. My first three I had with epidurals. My second birth was actually probably my most traumatic that I carried with me for a really long time. And my daughter experienced a birth injury called brachial plexus, which is the nerve that connects the arm to the spinal cord. She had shoulder dystocia.
Oh, wow.
So my midwife pulled her out of me, and in the process, instead of breaking her clavicle, which the maneuver usually requires, she basically internally severed her arm from her spinal cord. And it was
Oh
just
my
like
God.
hanging by a thread. Um, and after experiencing that, I didn't know how I was just like stuck in that fear mindset of what like surrounding birth, and I wasn't quite ready to um I wasn't able to open my mouth and tell them things that I wasn't comfortable with. I had that um be a good patient. my my second birth or third birth was also shoulder dystocia, but I was able to feel the epidural, feel my body because the epidural wasn't like super high. So when I
Mhm.
felt my baby stuck, I was able to just shift my bottom a little bit to the side, and he came right out. And after experiencing that, I felt that there was something about the drugs that was endangering my body and my baby. So when I was having my fourth baby, I was determined to have a different birth. So I actually traveled 45 minutes to a whole nother hospital. I never registered and just showed up, didn't give them any kind of documentation about my past. I wanted a complete redo for that birth. And when I signed in, I didn't do any paperwork or anything because I was deep in transition. But that birth itself kind of set me on the path to free birth my fifth baby because I was a little bit more empowered. I experienced the fetal ejection response. I was able to feel the contractions as I was just on the toilet the whole time, and it was so empowering. So when I found myself pregnant with my fifth baby, I did a whole lot more research, and I was working on how I can voice myself within the system. Like, how can I tell them no and deny things and be empowered and not be bullied? Because in my previous birth, they bullied me into the vitamin K. They actually, I thought my daughter was going to be medically kidnapped during that birth because I had like
Goodness.
five doctors in the room to bully me about the vitamin K shot. It was insane, and they like followed me out to our car. Like it was
Oh
just
my
insane.
goodness.
It was insane. So I wanted to I wanted to know how I could like strengthen my spirit in order to say no to these people because I had that what do you call it? It's like Munchausen proxy or something
Yeah.
where they just have it deeply ingrained into you, this fear about birth. You have to listen to
Yeah.
me because I hold authority.
Mhm.
So I was just, that's what I needed to overcome. And while I was pregnant with my fifth baby, I was only 12 weeks along when I got about, I experienced the most painful thing I ever felt in my entire life. And when I went into the bathroom, there was blood just pouring out of me, just gushing blood. I probably I probably lost at least a quart or two of blood. Um, and when I went to the hospital, I found out that like 50% of my placenta had torn away from the wall, and then the entire sac had torn away. So, obviously at 12 weeks, there was nothing, nothing that they could do. And I found myself just at a loss, and being a mother of many already, this was my fifth pregnancy. And I was just like, well, okay, so how much bed rest do I need? And my doctor tells me, he's like, well, actually, bed rest hasn't really been proven to help in any outcomes when women experience complications like this. And we just tell them to have bed rest to make them feel better. So he literally told me that. And that's when the
Wow.
veil finally dropped from my eyes and I saw the truth for what it was. These people are frauds. They don't truly know anything. And when I'm lied to, like I cannot stand being lied to. Immediately after that, I just knew that I was going to like change everything. So I, jumped into these, like, what is it on Facebook, the Unassisted
Yeah.
Pregnancy and Childbirth group. That was the
Yeah.
first one that I had ever joined, and I was in there like, how do I tell my provider, like, I'm obviously at that point I wasn't ready to free birth, but I was just asking a whole lot of questions and just, so I could know how our bodies really work and how birth really needed to go. And I had asked so many questions that another member of the group was just like, why don't you just free birth? Why don't you just birth unassisted? And I'm like, huh? That's a thing? Like people actually do that? Because I hadn't really been reading any stories in birth stories within that group. I just went in there to ask questions. So it didn't, stupidly, I feel kind of stupid, but I didn't realize that it was actually like a free birth and that I could choose that for myself. Um, so once she said that, it just totally clicked and I went all in for it. My husband was not on board. Like he was afraid, and I think it was just a few days before I actually went into labor with him that um, he was he was letting the pressure of others get to him, and he goes, "Why don't you just go to the hospital like everybody else?" And I said, "No, you could either do this with me or I'll do it without you. Like I don't need you here because
Can I,
I was not gonna do it again." Go
yeah.
ahead.
Can I ask a question? So, how were you processing like fears that were coming up? Because that's like a really big move, right? To go from like not even really knowing that free birth is like a thing that, women are doing out there and that it's actually like the way that our bodies were designed to birth and all of those things. Like you were just completely uh like new to this whole concept and then you just decided like I'm doing this and you were alone initially because, and I understand how it is when the partner's not on board. It's like can be very isolating in a way. And so how were you able to process all of these fears and kind of walk this journey solo initially?
Like I've always been like super adaptable to like my situation and my environment. I grew up as a foster child. I was moved from home to home. Our family was kind of torn apart. So like I've always had this adaptability to change, I guess. And I try not to identify with this, but I according to astrologists, I am a Leo. So saying that I feel a lot of people have an understanding of who a Leo is or what certain personality traits that a Leo has.
Yeah.
And I try not to take ownership of that title, but I used to. So
I
I do
understand.
love,
Same.
yep, I do love the spotlight. I love the attention, but also I don't know, just like this determination when I set my mind on something. I'm like all in. Basically, I went all in for it. And I definitely had uncertainties. I mean, but I honestly, I would have rather face those than to subject myself to what I experienced in the system again. Like violations after my baby was born, like them putting goop on their eyes when I said no, the the sneaky way that they stuck Pitocin in my IV after birth when I wanted a drug-free birth, I didn't want to have that again. The threat of medical kidnapping was definitely there. Like I didn't want that again. So that kind of snuffed out the fear or suppressed it, I guess, a little bit. Um, and honestly, when I went through that placental abruption, I was completely unsure what was going to happen to my baby. And I just that was my first step in learning surrender because I couldn't do anything. I didn't want to have like a bajillion ultrasounds. Um, because those itself, I feel like they made me a little bit more uncomfortable. But biggest thing was not subjecting myself to that kind of birth again because like
Yeah, that's
I
scarier.
carried that trauma with me.
Yeah.
Like it's stuck around for years. So yeah, like my husband, when I first told him that I wanted to free birth, and he was actually all for it because he's a bit of an attention junkie himself. So he's like, everybody's gonna think we're so badass, and
So hardcore.
yeah, and I am hardcore. I mean, like when I was pregnant with my fourth, we experienced some homelessness for a little while, and I was literally all pregnant, and I was fetching water from the river in gallon milk jugs so we could boil it for our showers. And like I was so fit that pregnancy. And um like I can do hard things. That is my specialty. So that's what I wanted to do. And towards the end a little bit, the pressure from others, like he has in the past been very impressionable to others' thoughts and their feelings on things. And there was quite a bit of fear being projected onto him, which makes sense because men, they're supposed to protect the birth space. So
Mhm.
he was intimidated by the responsibility. I'm sure someday I'll have to convince him to record a chat about his journey to free birth because
For
it would
sure.
be so interesting. The truth, from what my doctor at the time told me during my placental abruption, though, that was like the most major pivotal moment for me. That's because that's when all the trust in the system completely shattered. And that's when I took self agency. So I love that. Um,
Okay. So I'm curious, what was he suggesting that you do?
I mean, he just basically told me to wait it out and we'll keep an eye on things, and that's the best that we could do. And because of my blood loss, like I rested for the first week or so. And plus emotionally I was very distraught. But then I woke up one day and I was just like, I'm not going to um, let anybody curse me. Like, I wasn't going to
Amen.
accept that this is going to be a thing and I'm just going to start living and being happy, and whatever happens with this baby is meant to happen. And um, Aki was born at 37 weeks, and I had a very precipitous labor. I had a lot of back pain, but my husband was there to do some counter pressure, and it was the most freeing birth ever. Like, seriously, it was nothing quite like that. Like, I took I took my children to school the very next day. Like,
Wow.
I felt healed from,
Yes.
like, just being able to experience birth on my own terms for the first time. It was amazing, and obviously I was hooked because I never went back to the system.
Yeah.
um,
Yes. So,
and actually, for my sixth birth, I it was in 2020, so that's when I was kind of forced into the whole wild pregnancy thing too. So yeah,
so were you still receiving some sort of um, care during your pregnancy from a
I did.
provider?
I did. I continued to check with ultrasounds and the healing, which it healed completely. I think I had an ultrasound somewhere like maybe 32 weeks to check on where the placenta was. And that looked great. So that was like my green light. This is how I'm gonna, um, like, that gave me the final, the green light to attempt this free birth. And I
Yeah.
during the birth I did, what was it, like, around transition, just like when you're done, you don't want to do this anymore. I was tempted to call the ambulance and be like, get me that epidural, but I stuck it out. There was no
Wow.
breaks. I couldn't even stand up, because the contractions were just so, like, heavy, anchoring me to the floor, basically. So I wasn't going anywhere. But, like, I'm so happy I got to experience that, because it's like, once you know that there's an end, and though there was much anguish, once your baby comes, it's like forgotten. Like, I think women
Absolutely.
need to know that. Like, yeah, it's you're being drugged through hell for the time being, but, like, once your baby is born, it's all over, and you're like, I
Yeah.
could do that again. Like, and when you look back on it, like, it's not even that it was that painful, but
Yeah.
just the intensity of it all, like, your just body expanding, that kind of intensity is overwhelming.
Is that expansion, and then once you're expanded, you're forever like that. And so then when you look back on it in hindsight, you're like, that wasn't that bad. Like, I was made for that. So then you go on to free birth, your next two
hmm
children. So you had your seventh free birth. How was that? How was that
So,
one?
my seventh free birth was the birth that I always cry when I talk about this one. So, my daughter that was born with a shoulder dystocia injury, she she's almost 17 now. And it wasn't until the birth of my seventh that I was finally able to heal from her birth. And I can't believe it took 15 years to find peace with that, because I birthed a 10-pound baby. And when my daughter was injured, she was 9/12. So that was just like vindication that my body did not fail me, that my daughter wasn't just injured because she was too big to get out of my body, but like how big Sophia was and how intense her birth was and just how safely she was born. Just everything that the Creator revealed to me during that birth, I was finally able to forgive myself and move on from that. And it wasn't me that hurt my baby. It was the system that hurt my baby. And it was so healing, that birth. And Sophia was born after I experienced two miscarriages back to back. So much trauma surrounding that time in my life.
Mm.
It was the miscarriages that I had happened during we still had the mask mandate, and I never once wore a mask. And my county and the state actually tried to charge me with criminal trespass for not wearing a mask. And while I was in labor to birth my loss, I wasn't able to attend court, so they issued an arrest warrant. And I know that the stress from that case contributed to the loss. So, like, healing myself after those losses, going through the pregnancy again, just so much healing happened from that. And
Yeah.
uh, it was it was just incredible, like super incredible. And like I rested postpartum, which in the past I never really had the opportunity to do. Um, and for the first time, my children, but for the first time, my children were actually awake for the birth. So that was very interesting. Laboring with my children there. It wasn't in the middle of the night when I got my,
Yeah.
quiet darkness and peace. So, not that I was a fan of it, but I was able to adjust myself and do my best to not focus on the children being awake. But yeah, that was a beautiful birth, and yeah, but
I wanted to just say that actually, if I'm not mistaken, this birth was recorded live on Instagram, correct? Like this is the
yes,
birth that you have on your Instagram page. Okay. So I just wanted to point that out for anyone who's interested in actually seeing like a family birth that is just completely undisturbed and real raw, like this is what free birth is. It's a normal part of of life. It's a normal part of just being human and just having babies. And I was moved when I watched this. I didn't get to watch it live. I don't know if I was if we were friends at that time, but I did end up watching it right after having my most recent free birth of my son, Artemis. That's him right there in the background. Um, um, I watched it and I was so emotional. I was like 1 week postpartum and um, yeah, I was just so moved by the dynamics in that birth space, like how you had your children like coming in and out of this space, and your husband was there as like your rock and your protector, and it's so clear that he is like the protector of the birth space, the way that he like moves around you and like deals with the children while you're experiencing this intensity. And after having just experienced the intensity of birth myself, like so recent at the time of watching this birth, I had so much empathy for, I was like empathizing so much with like what you could have been experiencing, having all of that going on around you while you're experiencing like the intense waves of birth. Because I remember how I felt when I was going through it and I had my children around, and how it almost felt like it was unmanageable. And you just did it so beautifully. Just the way you and your husband like managed this space with the children there was just so beautiful. And yeah, I can't like recommend it enough as like a birth to watch, and like, you know, really just like learn about what real raw birth is, you know, family birth. Like, this is what it is. And yeah, I just wanted to say, like, thank you for sharing that beautiful experience with us. You know, it's such a gift to be able to see birth like that.
My husband was such a rock star for that birth. Like, big shout out to him.
He
Um,
was, yeah.
and I know they're my I experienced quite a bit of controversy because I went live for that birth, which I had quite a few emotions that I needed to work through that because my my live wasn't just some clickbait for attention or to sell something. And I really felt led by the creator to just show women what birth is. This is free birth. This is raw birth. I mean, it was the birth of my seventh baby. And knowing that free birth was an option was um, a pretty big deal to me. And I don't know if there's someone out there that would be a pretty big deal for as well. And actually, I have had so many women come to me, like um, a specific friend, Jenna. She was pregnant with her fifth baby, and she was getting ready to free birth for the first time, and my video was actually really helpful for her. And then other women who have gone on to have free births because I shared that video. Like, that was the point. Like,
Yeah,
fear has no place in this space, and it's not some scary thing. You don't need to um, medicalize it, pathologize it, all the things that word that I struggle with. Hope I said that right this time.
you did,
But
yes.
yeah, it it's one of my favorite births for sure. There was just so much about that, and I wasn't disturbed. I wasn't like I there was a moment where and I could go back and comment the moment when I found myself irritated, but I'm pretty sure I was getting ready to enter in that transition, and I found myself really irritated. And I'm like, all these effing kids, and the I became aware that the camera was still on. Hey, I'm busy, honey. But I got irritated that the camera was on, and like I needed a distraction, and that's like right when I had my husband turn on my jams. I my favorite stick figure album, and got me back into the right headspace, and I was able to focus on prayer and bringing my baby down. So that was
Yeah,
That
I
was the
could
only
feel that
time
shift.
that
Yeah.
yeah, like I felt disturbed at that moment, but I was able to get right back into the headspace that I wanted to be in, and going back to not being, disturbed, but um,
It's a
going
different type of
wide served
disturbed,
its purpose.
right?
Huh? Yeah.
Like it's a different type of disturbed, like when we say like an undisturbed birth, like that wasn't undisturbed birth because this is the natural flow of your life, right? Like these are your
Right.
kids, you're in your home, like you're with your partner, and this is just you moving with the way that your life naturally flows. Now, being disturbed by an outsider who, is uh, trying to take on the, role of like being the authority in the space, that's a whole different type of disturbed,
Oh, yeah.
like that is like, I just want to, clarify like for, people who might be listening and are new to all of the language out there and when referring to birth, and I know that word is thrown around a lot, but they're coming back from that kind of disturbance versus coming back from like a disturbance in a hospital where you're being manipulated and coerced and stuff are pretty drastically different. And I feel like we always, like, in birth there will be like challenging moments where you're having to move through something that is disturbing your flow, right? Because that is just how it is, whether we're at home with our kids or whether it's our husband who's just asking if we want water. Like I felt like I was like thrown off by that question. Like when my husband asked if I wanted water, I'm like, shh, don't say anything. Like, and having to like constantly find yourself again, through all of those things. And that's why it is very intense birthing around children, in my opinion. And I just was in such awe of how you handled all of that, just so beautifully, really, you and your husband.
Well,
Um,
thank you.
I know we've kind of sidetracked a bit, but I did want to just shout out that birth video.
Thank you. Um, I don't remember entirely where I was, but I will start talking about this guy now. Um, so when I first found out that I was pregnant with him, I had just started doula training, and then shortly after, which ended up kind of resurfacing again when he was first born, but my little brother died. So for the first several weeks, I didn't share that I was pregnant with very many people. Um, I, I when I'm grieving, I tend to when I'm grieving and when I'm going through like hardships in life, I tend to pull away and not um, do a whole lot of sharing or like staying connected to the people that I have relationships with. So I kind of withdrew a little bit. And then somewhere around 14 weeks, I decided to go, since I was showing very much already, I decided to just make a video and share it about this belly band for EMF protection that I had, which kind of blew up a little bit with some of my friends. You didn't tell me you were pregnant. And, the loss changes you, and whether it's your own baby or someone that you love, and especially the trauma that I carried throughout childhood, it was just a very impactful loss. And I struggled to be in the beginning to be like real happy about the baby because of the sadness of losing my brother. Um, but once I started sharing, which I really wish I would have just shared sooner, because when you withhold things and you bottle them, they tend to explode. And I wasn't celebrating my baby, so I lost out on a lot of joy that I could have had. But yeah, it's so good, and he carried me through that. And going through doula training was such a it was a faith driven thing, so it kind of filled my spiritual cup, and I was able to um, overcome my grief. And I kind of feel guilty at how fast I was able to recover from that grief. I think I really only grieved hardcore for the first 2 months, and anyways, it ends up being a big deal when he was born, but I'll get into that later. Um, the pregnancy itself was very, very good. I probably am 38 now. This was my 12th pregnancy, eighth baby. So I think it's pretty incredible that I felt the best that I had ever felt in any of my other pregnancies, which I mean, when you have so many children, you can kind of learn what works for you and pay attention to your diet and supplements, things that you're taking care of, how your life is going, how you manage stress. Like you can change things to make them a better experience for you. And knowing that my body isn't broken automatically just because I'm pregnant was a huge deal. Um, I felt good. The day, oh gosh, I got so big, so big. I was measuring, like, fundal height is not a good way to determine anything, but just for the curiosity of it, I did measure myself, and I saw that I was like 11 weeks ahead, measuring 11 weeks ahead. There were some well, not some. There were a lot of comments everywhere about, oh, twins. I can't say that wouldn't be dreamy, but definitely felt like there could have been two in there because of how large that I was. But anyways, there only ended up being one baby, obviously. But whew. So, like, I thought for sure I was going to have this guy at 34 weeks for some reason, because I had a lot of heaviness then. And I was like, oh, this baby's coming anytime.
Yep.
And then the heaviness went away and I started feeling good again. But what was it? It was right around 36 weeks, and there was this specific lady at Fred Meyer. I always do self checkout because I can control my children better. And the self checkout lady, like, I'm in this store like 3 times a week, okay? Every time she'd see me, which was every time I was in Fred Meyer, she'd be like, "You look like you've dropped some more." And I'm just like, "No, I haven't. No, I haven't." Like, any comments about my body, like someone knows better than I do what is happening, is just always it it was bothering me a lot.
People
And
love to do that with pregnant women. It's bizarre.
yeah, like, I don't there's there's some comments that are like endearing and I don't mind, but then once I get to a certain point, I'm just like, I'm done with the societal, what would you call it, formalities that
The
people
stereotypes
do. But
and
yeah,
the
like, just
nonsense.
because, like, people are automatically drawn to pregnant women. There's just something just absolutely wonderful and beautiful about bringing forth life into the world.
Yes.
And people just automatically just forget that you are not a display, like a living display that that can just, touch and invade. Like, there is a such thing as privacy just because you imagine, like, I swear everybody just imagines you on stirrups with, legs wide open and a doctor
Mhm.
right there, kind of desensitizing birth a little bit. Like, I think that has helped draw the line, like, where people are able to cross into that privacy threshold, and suddenly we don't have privacy anymore. But yeah, getting towards the end, I was so done hearing it. And I'm so thankful that my body decided to go into labor at 39 weeks, because I was like, so, oh, my hips. My hips were hurting, and it didn't matter what position I was in. I was just done. It was actually so leading into labor, I didn't have a whole lot of prodromal labor that I've had previously. Like, I would experience prodromal labor, just practice labor, for weeks, like literally like 6 weeks at least. But I didn't start having prodromal labor until like 35, 36 weeks, where I would just have minimal contractions. It would be in the evening when I'd be all relaxed, but they weren't like super intense that I had felt previously. So I think that I feel like the extra nourishment that I was doing for my blood was extremely helpful. But so Sunday, when I was 39 weeks, that was the very last day for king tides here in Oregon, which is where it's when the tide is up super high and the waves just like crash upon the shore. So I woke up that day and knew that I was going to drag my husband out to Lincoln City to see the king tides. And I was like, who knows? Maybe going is going to help us have a baby. So I was determined to have a baby, and it did not disappoint. And everybody and their mother goes to the beach to see the king tides this time of year. So there was a whole lot of traffic. But once we got there, and there's this spot in Depot Bay um, where they do a whole lot of whale watching, but when the king tides come, it just splashes up onto the shore and just like covers the road, it even hits all the shops. The waves are just
Oh,
incredible.
wow.
Um, which I have some video footage. I intend on sharing soon. But yeah, the king tides are just amazing, and there's just something about watching the ocean that is just powerful and peaceful, and it makes one feel incredibly small in this like vast, awesome world.
Yes.
So, um, we actually even got out of the car, and the children wanted to be sprayed by the ocean water. So they convinced us, and we got out. And I
Oh,
joked, I'm like, okay, we could totally have a baby now. I've been salted and blessed by the sea. So, um, and I was licking it off my skin, and it was like so good. And when the water like splashed my back, it felt like and looked like it left little pieces of the salt behind. So um it was very what's the word? It was invigorating. I
yeah.
felt like it just filled me full of energy. Um and we ended up I don't know, hanging out outside in the freezing cold for about 20 minutes, and then we went straight home and went about life. We ended up going to bed early because we were just exhausted. There's just something about experiencing uh just an activity like that just like fills your cup, and then you want to just crash and rest. And we did. We went to bed. The last time I looked at my phone was like 9:08, and I literally woke up an hour later at like 10:12, and my water was leaking. Like literally, I woke up peeing myself, and I'm like I didn't just pee myself. And then there was another gush, and I'm just like my eyes opened wide, and I just sat there by myself for another few minutes just feeling these gushes. And I'm like, babe, I shook him awake. My water just broke. He's like, huh? What? We're doing this now? And I'm like, well, I don't know. My water just broke. My water has never broken like that. Like ever.
No.
Um, when I was 37 weeks pregnant with my very first baby, I had my membrane stripped, and I was leaking water after that, but my water never broke. Um, so that was a whole new experience for me. And I stood up out of bed real quick and had another gush just splash on the floor. And when my husband heard that, he gets out of bed. He's like, well, what do we do now? I'm so tired. I'm like, well, I don't really know. I think I don't have any contractions, so I guess we're just waiting for contractions to start. And I'm like, go back to bed. So he went back to bed. I tried laying down. It wasn't happening. They're like, there's no way I'm going to be able to rest right now. I can just feel all the gushing and every move that I made. So I put on, well, actually, I just stuffed a towel between my legs so I could walk around the house. And while I was in the living room, I remembered, I'm like, oh, I was going to do this was it Ebby Moyer did this mountain of herbs bath immediately after labor. She said her mom had 7 babies and she swore by it. So I bought all the herbs and followed her directions so I would have that for immediately after birth. So here I am just like waiting for contractions to start, and I'm like prepping all of these herbs. And shortly after starting, like in the middle of this, I started to have contractions because I wasn't sure if my water was going to be broke for like 24 hours before contractions started. Like, you can't have any expectations about birth surrounding these things. So I just got to prepping for postpartum. But yeah, I started, rocking through them while prepping all of this, and I was listening to worship songs, and then uh my brother's loss kind of brought up in my mind again as I was going through this, and just thinking about how I don't know why the loss of my brother ended up like resurfacing in my mind while I was um starting contractions. But it was listening to that song, the bird, oh gosh, what's the title of it? I'll save you a seat next to me at the table, where it's like the crowded table song. um and it just, the crying kind of helped make the contractions a little bit stronger, and just got me in worship mode. I know that the Creator brought me through so much, and I think feeling the loss so hard was just a really bad timing, but it didn't last very long, thankfully. Um, so 2 hours after my water broke, I started having contractions, and I was able to finish my herbal tea bath. And I wasn't quite ready to wake my husband yet. I was kind of enjoying the quiet because then I could just do my silly recording thing and kind of decide where I wanted to have the baby because like I hadn't determined where I was going to have him. Like I joked about having him around my new little fireplace heater and I was looking on my couch and I took a picture of my mountain of laundry and I'm like, guys, don't have any expectations when going into birth because everything's probably going to be a mess and it's going to be okay. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not going to birth here. So kind of pushed my living room table over and I decided, well, we're doing this in front of the fireplace. And it got to the point I'd have to look back at my videos and see how long it took, but I was ready to not be alone. Probably after I want to say maybe an hour and 40 minutes I was done being alone and I went and woke my husband up and shortly after that was when things were kind of getting intense and heavy on my hips. My daughter woke up. My my baby. She's 20 months old. So she woke up and he had to go and get her out of bed and hold her. She wanted to nurse, but there was no way that that was happening. She was crying quite a bit. And here I am, just like the contractions are just starting to get like really intense. I have to kind of like brace myself and bear down a little bit. And my moaning from the intensity woke up my teenage daughter. So she came downstairs and was all like, Mom, are you okay? Um, so I kind of had to adjust my way through children being awake yet again. And oh, poor Sophia, she was just not very happy. And then it was probably like 20, 30 minutes later after she had woken up that I was like, baby, I need you. And I needed to have him like come and do counter pressure on me. Otherwise, I felt like I was going to die. Like, it was very, it was all in my hips. And, like, I was like grabbing my hips and rubbing my hands down my thighs. And it was like so intense and so painful. I want to say that like I tend to have a very pendulous belly. It sticks out, kind of hangs down, and doesn't give baby the best kind of positioning, which I feel have a factor in um, how some of my birth experiences go. Um, but my husband provided that first counter pressure that he did on my hips was done just right. It like healing hands. It took away all my pressure, all my pain, and I'm like, oh, that feels so good. And then the contraction was over, and he stopped, and had to go back over to soothe Sophia to because she's upset. She could hear Mama crying. She doesn't understand why Mama's not coming to get her. Um, and then the next contraction hit, and that pain came rushing back, and I couldn't make it through the second contraction without him, and I needed him to come and do it for me again. And it did not feel good as that first one. It was more of like, distract me through this. It was so intense, and I wasn't afraid, but the intensity of these contractions, brought on a little bit of uncertainty, like, why is this so painful? I didn't want it to like draw me into that fear, tension, pain cycle, but there was definitely a lot of tension that there it was just impossible for me to wade through. Like I um the contractions were not coming intermittently. They were not like close together. They didn't increase in intensity. They weren't one on top of each other. They were spaced out farther than I'm used to. They didn't feel like it didn't feel like my body was pushing for me. Um, and like I felt like I was gonna need to just like power push my way through this. Um, it was so intensely painful, and I don't want that to be um something that puts others off because I say that. But like it felt like my body was breaking. My hips were just being split apart. It was it was very difficult. But I wasn't afraid. I wasn't, there wasn't any doubt in my mind, and more like, how am I going to make it through this to the next step? Because, like, literally, like, I was pushing. I started pushing him, and I got my legs in a position to where like knees in, feet out, giving my baby as much room as possible. I knew I knew my baby was going to be big. Didn't know that he was a boy at the time, but uh it was so hard, and I just started pushing because I didn't feel like my contractions were pushing him down and out for me. Um and it was working. Thinking back, I'm not I'm not entirely sure how quick it started to happen. Like in as I'm experiencing it and like remembering it, it felt like it was a lot quicker than it was when I looked back over the video footage that I had taken. But when when I started pushing, I could just feel him like struggling to come through. Like I was doing all the work with my pushing, and I felt like something was missing, and I couldn't pinpoint it. And I just kind of wiggled my body around. I went from, my right leg being up in the captain's position to my left leg being up. Um, Stretching my body certain ways to give him more room and dislodge himself because I feel like the pushing wasn't getting him out. And when his head finally came, oh, just just as his head finally came out, which just struggled to push this big old head out. I yelled at my husband to not touch him, and I don't know why I yelled at him not to do that because he knows better. But I guess it made me feel better to say it. um, but looking back at the video of when his head came out, he was so blue and so purple. Oh, it was so hard to push him out, and I could like feel his head. I didn't know where his face was or anything. Um, but like it was so tempting to just put my hands in there and try to help pull him out because I could not escape from the sensations that I was feeling. Um, when you first birth the head, it's like you just need to breathe a little bit because that's usually the pause that you get before baby just ejects and is born. And I didn't have that. I like was telling myself in my head to pause. Like, this is that pause. This is that safe pause that's normal. Baby is going to turn and be born. That's how it goes. And it wasn't happening. And I felt this sense of urgency and just power push the rest of them out. And once those shoulders come, then the rest just, he just plopped right out. And I looked, I looked down at him, and there wasn't any fear, but I saw my little brother, and it was so hard because he was seemingly lifeless, and he was just so blue and so purple. His He didn't have any reflexes. His arms were just flat on his side. And when I saw his face, I saw the face of my baby brother when he was a baby. And I swooped him up so fast. It was like I had these thoughts in like a nanosecond. Time does not exist during birth, like at all. But I looked at him, and for like half a second, I was like, no. And I feel like I had a friend recently lose her baby, and it just broke my heart. So for another nanosecond, I thought to myself, no, not my baby too. But I picked him up. I just swooped him up and I brought him to me, and I'm like, you're here and you're safe. And I held him closely, and it was, I sucked his nose and his mouth with my mouth. I was like, baby, you're here, you're okay, you're safe. And I just held him really close to my face and my chest. And I can't do it now because I was crying and I almost stepped up, but I breathed in through my nose and blew it out through my mouth, like he could feel and hear me breathing, and that would call to him. And then I was humming right by his ear, like right up here, with where his ear and his chin meet his chest, just that whole area. And he had a little squeak. I'm like, oh yeah, you're here. And he just slowly squeaked his way to reality. And I feel like maybe just as something happened during birth where he might have, lost consciousness or something, where he wasn't able to do his part in birth, and maybe that contributed to why it was so hard to push him out of me. But later looking at the pictures that I took, I feel like maybe his placenta had already started to detach while I was in labor. Because, after he was born, I walked like 20 feet to my sofa to crawl into bed, and my placenta literally just plopped out of me. Like, it just fell right out. And looking at the picture, it had already started going a little white from the placenta up into the cord. So it just had me very curious as to, what that could have meant. Um, he also had the longest cord I have ever had with any of my babies. And I remember seeing him born, and while he was laying there seemingly lifeless, the cord was just up around the back of his neck, draped like a scarf. It wasn't like completely around his neck or anything. But oh man, it was never at one point was I afraid, but the the spiritual aspect of what was going on in my mind through all this was like much much different than anything that I had experienced before. And I wonder if maybe feeling all that I felt concerning my brother, that this was like a promise to me, maybe, but it's
It does
all gonna
sound,
be okay. It's all gonna be okay.
for people who are listening and have not experienced, free birth, or, are, um, or even, for those who have and like know understand a lot about birth, we know that there is a huge spectrum of normal, and some of these things that are normal aren't acknowledged as normal in our society. And it's only through hearing these stories that we hear these things, because in hospitals, we're not even given the chance to experience birth in this way, right? Like a baby would never be given
Right.
those moments to have their first breaths. Forget about it. I mean, they would have like all the
They
things
would be
shoved up
whisked
their
away.
nose. Yeah,
The section the nose. We're gonna cut the cord. We're gonna whisk your baby
yes.
away to perform life-saving measures, but in reality, causing more harm because you're like severing their oxygen source. Like
Mm-hmm.
so much,
Exactly.
so much,
Exactly.
and
Love your story so much because you did have like such unwavering faith throughout all of this. So he did take his first breaths, and he's beautiful and healthy. When he took his first breaths, um, how did you feel after that? Were there still like, because I know you said like you didn't have fear around him not breathing right away. So what
so
was helping you through that whole process?
just like you mentioned, the like how I felt in seeing my brother and him and experiencing that. Like, I felt like, yeah, I was promising me that loss didn't get to have the final say. So I didn't have that like fear in me. But just like the job's not finished. And once he took those breaths, and I was just like encouraging him to take more, take his time. I'm right here waiting. And once he fully come to, he just cried. He cried and he cried and it was just so wonderful. But he probably cried the longest out of all my others. And he just laid there connected to me and laid on my chest and just cried until he was ready to be done. Probably a good 20 minutes. And like I thought that I had recorded this whole thing. And when I was going through my phone and I realized that it had stopped recording immediately after his birth, I found myself grieving. But then later I was thinking to myself that, that was just for my husband and I to witness. That was just a personal experience that Yahuwah wanted for us. And though I grieve that I can't share that, um, I get to selfishly hold that knowledge, I guess, that like literally with every single breath I prayed for deliverance. I was like, yeah, please deliver me from this pain. And get this baby out of me. And like literally every prayer and every hard push, just he gave me the endurance to get him out. And uh, it was hard. It was a very hard delivery, and he came out a little bruised, which is a bit of an injury from being stuck, but um he was safe, and it was all on our own terms. I can't imagine what we would have faced if we were with, like, even I had a
My
midwife.
goodness, yeah.
um like my sister wanted so bad to be here for one of the births, but um when she was living with me, it kind of dawned on her like what I really intended to do and what it would really be like for her. And then she moved out as quickly as she could because she felt like she couldn't lay witness to that, which I'm thankful for as well. But
Yeah, actually,
I
the
mean,
honesty is pretty awesome because I don't think that many people are able to face that, like that they're not ready to witness something like that, because that could be an incredible disturbance to the birth space of someone else's fears coming in. And even if they
exactly.
are silent, you can still feel everything as the birthing woman. So yeah, I'm grateful that you didn't have to navigate through that. Uh,
Yeah.
um, of course, I know how your postpartum has gone so far because we chat often, but I just want to hear you kind of like share with the audience what this postpartum has been like for you.
So the first 2 days, I was managing my pain pretty well. Um, the afterbirth pain was something that I was very anxious about, and I did a whole lot of prepping for to make sure I had all the things to help me manage it naturally. So the first 2 days were great, but then day 3 and 4, I had to poop, and uh, it was like after I had, like, while I was giving birth, I felt like my body was breaking all over again. It was very difficult to poop for days 3 and 4. My my stomach hurt. I felt like my body was broken in half, like right in the middle, because that's like where the pain was, and it just like radiated a circle all around me, and I had to like put my butt up in the air to find relief, which had me later thinking that maybe I could have possibly had a prolapse. I'm not sure, but those 2 days threw me off. But then day 5 was a whole lot better. I have not been resting as much as I thought that I would rest, and that everybody pushes in regards to rest. But I listened to my body, and like I felt like I wanted to go to the store because walking and standing made me feel like my bones were being put back together, like it helped hold my bones together. I was back in the kitchen on day 5 and 6. I rest and I nap when I need to, but also it felt really good to just be up and like move my body because my hips were in a lot of pain. So that's probably going to be an unpopular postpartum experience, but I wanted to move my body, and I have felt really good. As soon as I got past those first, well, not first, but the first poop and those 2 days of whatever hell I was going through to poop. After that, it's been smooth sailing. And I've actually even um, lost 18 pounds on top of what I lost just birthing this
Mm.
guy. So, and he was 10 pounds, 6 ounces, which kind of explains the difficulty in getting him out a little bit, especially if he wasn't able to do his part in being born. So, um, but yeah, it's he's almost 3 weeks old now, and I have been in postpartum bliss this whole time, happy, not angry. It's been awesome, and I have zero regrets um, moving my body so soon after birth, because like every birth is different, every experience is different, and what we need, or what our bodies needed for the last birth, isn't necessarily going to be what we need for the recent one. So, um, his birth was definitely humbling and taught me quite a bit. I don't believe that birth is necessarily just birth. You need to be in touch with yourself and your creator, and you have to have that trust and faith in the process. You have to like know that your body isn't broken to make it through that. I can't imagine how things would have gone if I was full of fear in what was happening, but like literally I prayed through it all, and with every breath was an answer that carried me through. So pretty amazing. He's such a good guy, such a good baby, sleeping this whole time.
I love
I love
it.
hearing all the breastfeeding baby noises.
I know,
It's
right?
like the
Both we have
best.
both of our little guys here. They're probably about 3 weeks apart because yeah, he'll be 7 weeks soon. When was he born?
The
What's his
18th,
birthday? The
November
18th.
18th, 3:20 in the
Oh,
morning. So, yeah,
so sweet. Oh, yeah, that's such a beautiful story, and it just really goes to show, yeah, how spiritual the experience of giving birth is. And each and every time is so different because it gives us what we need at that time, and
yeah,
our creator is just so good, and so his design is just so intelligent that, yeah, like birth is designed to take us to like the depths of ourselves, and that's the beauty of it, is that expansion, you really can't get that in any other experience in life, at least from my experience, like I've never experienced anything that has helped me to like level up in life so um intensely in such a short period of time other than birth. Like
right?
it's
And then when you think you know all you need to know, then you're quickly humbled and taught that, oh, there's more. There's
yeah,
more to learn. Um, I love having conversations like this because there is no narrative when it comes to birth other than like you just need to trust it and know you're not broken.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I,
Oh, well,
I
thank you
love
so much.
Thank you for having me. I loved being able to talk about this.
I just want to end this by asking you a question because you just have so much wisdom, and as a mama of eight and just having experience for free births, I am curious to know, like, what would you tell the mamas out there who are maybe considering free birth or who have had like a traumatic birth and they don't know where to turn next? What piece of advice can you shed on that situation?
I haven't always been super spiritual or anything or really religious, but I feel like this experience, knowing, like, knowledge is power and truth sets you free. It tells us in scripture everywhere that the truth sets you free, and there is nothing more factual than that. Any mamas looking to break from the system and maybe free birth, or even, birth with an authentic midwife who isn't bound by the state. Like, birth in power the way that you want, and to empower yourself with knowledge, because when you know how the body is truly designed to birth, how our creator designed it to be, you know that there is no mistakes in the process. Like with everything involving our health, and like take complications like preeclampsia, where you're really just, there is nothing pre about it. It's your body telling you that you need something else. So when you know the truth about these things in a natural way, aside from the medical system and what they want you to think this thing is, that you're empowering yourself to help your own outcome and healing, know how the body works, so that you could trust it. Like, that knowledge brings trust. Knowledge is just empowerment. But for me, there is no giving birth without trust and faith in the creator. So for whatever that looks like to you, you know, empower yourself with the truth of things, get to the root cause of whatever it is you're fearing, and you will be able to overcome that fear. Like, for me, for the longest time, it was shoulder dystocia. And here, with his birth, I experienced a fifth shoulder dystocia, and whatever level of dystocia it was, it didn't hold me back, because I had trust and faith in the process, and I had that connection with myself, that intuition, which is really just that Yah within you, God, our creator, the most high.
Yeah,
He's there guiding you through it. And if you don't trust yourself or how birth works, then you're going to overlook that presence. I hope I made that
absolutely.
make sense.
100%. Yes, it absolutely makes sense. Thank you so much, Shauna. I really, really can't express enough how honored I am to have you come and share your stories here on the podcast. And I know that it's going to bless the listeners to hear your stories. So thank you so, so much.